Rental demand is created by the sheer amount of people that are coming into the country. It's all about supply and demand. Do we have enough property? Do we have enough people coming into the country?
So in this video, Stephen, we're talking about rental yield in the context of the Dubai property landscape. What it is, how you calculate it, what factors influence rental yield, and of course, what you believe would be the future outlook for rental in Dubai property. So let's start at the very beginning. What is rental yield and how does someone calculate it?
Rental yield is the return that you receive in rent from a property that you own. That's the basics of it. Now, how do you calculate it? You need to know all the factors involved and all the costs involved in that property. And then we look at the rent. So you have a gross rent, and then you have a net rent, net rental yield, gross rental yield. And that will depend on the costs involved, on the annual costs that do vary. Things like service fees, management fees, property management fees, maybe some agents' fees out there that you might have to pay to rent that property out. So for an example, you buy a property for $1 million. That $1 million, for the purposes of this example, includes all the DLT fees. It includes all the other costs involved in purchasing that property on the day of purchase. And then you have your rent. So your rent for this purpose is $80,000 a year. So that gives you a gross rental yield of 8%. Take away management fees, service fees, maybe some agency fees that were involved in renting that property out at the outside, at the beginning of the year. Let's say that's 10,000 dirhams in total. So that gives you a net rent of 70,000 a year, and therefore a net rental yield of 7%.
What's considered a good rental yield currently in the Dubai property market?
A good rental yield is totally dependent on the value of the property. So the more expensive the property, the less the rental yield, the lower the rental yield. You find this anywhere else in the world. So the more expensive property, the lower the rental yield. There's only so much you can ask for rental on a property. So we tend to talk about 8% to 10% here, that sort of range. But that's only really available on the cheaper properties, the lower values, or properties that maybe you bought off plan a long time ago, where the values have increased, the rents have increased, and therefore the rental yields are much higher.
How does the rental yield in Dubai compare to other international property markets?
Every city is going to be different. There's going to be different factors that dictate how much rental you're going to get. But I'm talking to my clients, and certainly ones in India where they're happy to, or they're not happy, but they get around 4% net, maybe 3 or 4% net. In London, you might only get 1 or 2%, plus you've got to pay tax on that. Whereas places like Manchester or Liverpool, you might have much higher rates, like 7 or 8 or even 10%. It really depends on your the type of property you've got and the value of the property and who's renting from you.
So what factors do influence rental yields in Dubai's property market?
It's all dependent on the, again, I go back to my argument, buy something which is scarce, where there's a higher demand, a better quality community that you're in, because people want to be in communities here more often than not, or they want to be in the best buildings, and those are the ones that demand the highest rents, simply because they offer the best amenities to people. It's not just about location. Location is important here, but it's not the most important factor here. A lot of people, especially from overseas, are focused on getting into the best location. Best location doesn't necessarily give you the best rental yield or the best capital growth. It's about the quality of the building, the quality of the amenities, how well it's being cared for, the community in which it is. That's the most important factor that dictates rental yield and capital growth.
So how does an investor assess the kind of rental yield or rent that they'll get?
When you're buying a property off plan, we can't tell you what that property is going to receive in rent in 2 or 3 years' time. You can only look at similar properties that are available today and look at what the rents are in that building next door to you that's exactly the same, maybe the same developer, what that developer is receiving. Sort of, you do this comparative market analysis again. Take any developer, see what else they've done, see how the rents compare to other buildings in their area. Is that developer receiving a higher rent? Why are they receiving a higher rent? And the likelihood is that in the next building they build in their neighbourhood, they will also receive a higher rent. So that's the type of thing that I would be looking at, is who the developer is and what they've done in the past and what type of rents they're getting in comparison to their neighbours.
How strong is rental demand in Dubai, and what is driving it?
Look, I've been doing this for 20 odd years now in Dubai, and I've been a tenant for a lot of those years. And rental demand is created by the sheer amount of people that are coming in to the country. Not everybody arrives here with a load of money in their back pocket and is able to buy a property. And certainly not everybody is able to arrive here and then get a mortgage immediately. The rental market is always good. There's a lot of new people coming here. We have a very strong short-term rental market. So people are buying properties here to put on the Airbnb model, the short-term holiday lets, monthly rentals, etc. There's huge demand for that type of property. People are coming here. Maybe they certainly can't afford to buy a property, but they can afford to rent a property on a short-term or even long-term basis until they get their feet under the table, until they become established, until they realise they want to stay here, which often takes 2 or 3 years for people to realise that actually they're not just coming here for a couple of years, they really do love it here. Then they start buying.
What trends do you foresee in Dubai's rental market that could impact rental yields?
Look, it's all about supply and demand. It always comes down to supply and demand. That's the basis of all rental situations here in Dubai. Do we have enough property? Do we have enough people coming into the country? These are the factors that are going to dictate the type of rental yields that we're going to see in the future.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen. That wraps up rental yield in the Dubai property market.
If you need any help with off-plan property in Dubai, please get in touch. All my contact details are in the description below.